I'm presenting today in Richard's absence. He's currently on a train on the way to an off-site meeting tomorrow. So you've got me for today. Welcome, Jackie. Nice to see you. So I will, without further ado, get started so we can get our presenters ready to present. This is just a quick reminder of our purpose pyramid. So this is basically everything that we want to do within the trust. It sets our strategic direction and underpins a lot of the work, particularly that we're doing improvements on. So Ella, next slide, please. Our core principles from a people first perspective all centre around our patient, so the person we care for, and this is really just a reminder of the way that we're working with teams. So very much we're aware that our teams are the ones who know what the issues are and know what some of the ideas and suggestions might be, and we just go along and kind of support them and help them and enable them to deliver that in what is hopefully as respectful a way as possible. And today is all about that sharing of ideas and a bit of celebration around some of the things that people have achieved. Next slide, please, Ella. Another reminder just quickly for the 5 pillars of people first, and I guess important in every walk of life is to have a purpose, but particularly when we're working with teams or starting new projects, it's really key that we have a clear purpose, and ideally that's aligned to those trust objectives and the pyramid that we saw briefly just previously. All of our improvement work is founded on PDSA or scientific learning, a very simple way of planning what you want to look at, trying it out, studying the results, and then taking action as a result of that. And all of that is underpinned by, having a really good understanding of what metrics you want to look at, what data you want to look at, and how you learn from that. And then I guess those last 2 pillars relate to the management system, which we're trying to roll out within the trust. So you've got improvement huddles, which are very team focused, give teams an opportunity to come up with ideas, raise concerns, and celebrate successes, which are really important. And then that final pillar is team health, which is a routine that we've introduced and forms part of the improvement huddle, but really focuses on how we can get psychological safety within teams and how we can work with teams so that they can keep an eye on their morale and hopefully work more effectively. Ella, next slide, please. So here's to today. So we've got 3 presentations. So as I said right at the start, and some of you may have missed, we may be able to give you a little bit of time back. We aim to spend kind of 5 or 6 minutes on each presentation. Then there's an opportunity for any questions that you've got either in the chat or, if you want to shout those out, I will give you the opportunity. And then, potentially we'll have a little bit of time back at the end. So I would like to hand over to Andrea. So thank you, Andrea. Ella has the slides, so as and when you want to move those forward, if you just ask her, she'll do that for you. And really nice to see you.
Yeah,
thank you.
Okay, so my name's Andrea. I'm the support manager in the ear, nose and throat department. And I'm just going to talk through some of the plans we're working on to improve theatre efficiency. So if we move on to the next slide, please. So what's the problem? So in ENT, we're only using about 71% of our theatre time efficiently. And we've got about 800 patients or adults waiting for surgery, and 50% of them are waiting longer than 18 weeks at the minute. So we've got patients waiting up to 78 weeks at present. So next slide, please. Okay, so what's the plan? So nationally, we've got a target to increase theatre utilisation to 85%. And then also within our area, we would like to reduce on-the-day cancellations of patients to less than 1 per week. We've currently got about 3 or 4 patients cancelled on the day. And we're also looking to increase our cases per week from 34 patients per week. So that's the average we're treating a week, although it was back at the end of July. And then how are we going to do this? So we're already running weekly theatre list reviews, where we look at the bookings of the list for the following week. And it gives us an opportunity to identify any issues in advance, such as with equipment or staffing. In addition, we've set up an admin team improvement header with our admissions team to share best practice, review our data, and to focus on team health. We also have plans to do a process mapping session, which we hope to run next week. Next slide, please. So what we're currently focusing on is our weekly list reviews. So the meeting's usually well attended. It has the theatre sister, admin manager, the admissions team, and sometimes our lead anaesthetist. Each week we review the following week's lists, and we check that they're fully booked, that the case mix is appropriate. It also gives the theatre teams the opportunity to consider their staff and skill mix, prepare any specialist equipment or products that they may need. We also spend the time looking back at the previous week's utilisation. We're working to analyse the gap between what was planned in our theatre list reviews the week before and what actually happened. We usually run through why we think the lists weren't as well used or as not as productive as we'd planned. And we also highlight where the lists went well and try to use that best practice again for the following week. So next slide, please. So last week we started our team improvement huddle, and this week we plan to define our strategic plans, look at the metrics we want to focus on, with the overall meeting aim to support ongoing improvements and learning within the team. Next slide, please. So since the end of July, we've seen a slight improvement in performance. So our overall utilisation performance has improved by 5% on average. We've had 1 week where we completed 68 surgeries, another week where we did 88% utilisation, and the average cases per week for the last 2 months is up to 42. That's an increase of 8 from when we first started at the end of July. Next slide, please. So the next steps, so we're planning a process mapping session for next week. We're going to identify all the steps in the booking process, look at the barriers in the process and come up with possible solutions. And then we're also going to focus in our weekly meetings on theatre cancellations, looking at the reasons why patients are cancelled, see if there's any ways we can prevent them. And obviously the overall aim is to support ongoing improvements and learning via the team improvement huddle. I think that's Brilliant. It. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrea. That was great. Very, very clear presentation. Lovely to see lots of data in there. I haven't had any questions in the chat, but I do have a quick question, and hopefully that will give other people a chance just to think of any that they may have. And that was around the week that you had 68. Obviously, you know, that's really impressive. Was there anything there that you kind of picked up on that you might be able to, you know, replicate going forward?
Well, I think we're just trying to make everything business as usual and carry on with that weekly. That we're focusing on adults at the moment, so we will be able to replicate that with the paediatric team. It's a separate team that we don't manage. So all of the good things that come out of this, we will try and implement with the paediatric admissions team and try and get their utilisation up as well. So
great, lovely, thank you. Brilliant. Has anybody else on the call got any questions? No? Okay. Well, if you do think of any, obviously you've got the chat. And thank you again, Andrea. And I think we're moving on to Neil.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Neil Hummercott. I'm head of the improvement team in the Quality Academy team. So first of all, Jonathan Cope sends his apologies. So Jonathan and I have been working closely with colleagues in primary care around the GP to acute trust interface. Jonathan was very keen to be along today, but he's got a competing engagement around kind of system meetings. So you've got me instead. Just want to talk to you just a little bit around kind of what we describe as GP red line. So clearly everyone's feeling the pressure at the moment. We're feeling it here in the acute trust, but obviously colleagues in primary care are feeling the pressures of demands from patients as well. So there's been work recently around being very clear around what work needs to be done within primary care and what work should be picked up by colleagues in secondary care. So this is where this whole kind of idea of kind of GP red lines and clarifying responsibilities is coming from. So the problem we're trying to solve, or the opportunity we're trying to carry out, is making sure that activities relating to patient care are taken in the right place and not delayed. So off the back of that, Jonathan and I are working with some key practices and also with colleagues internally within the trust as well, with 4 clear aims. The first thing is to see if we can improve communication lines between the trusts and GPs. Secondly, being very clear around the processes that we would like general practice to follow to raise their concerns, and then how we take those concerns and address them. We also see an opportunity to be clearer to colleagues within the trust around what we're describing as external professional standards. So these are the kind of practices that we want colleagues to follow to make sure we're doing work in the right place. And it's also clear from discussions with colleagues in primary care that there's some potential areas around particular pathways where we can work together for continuous improvement, for areas of mutual patient benefit, so patients end up having a better experience, but also it just helps in terms of workload allocation either within the trust or within primary care. So some of the themes that were coming out of this work kind of initially was concerns around inappropriate work transfer back to primary care. So this is in scenarios where we've got somebody in as an inpatient and we're identifying the need to onwardly refer to another specialty. And also around the issuing of sick notes or sickness certificates, either following attendance in ED or as inpatients as well. So some themes there and some opportunities there in terms of making sure that we're kind of handling some of those activities better. There's also quite a lot of feedback from primary care around wanting to get updates from us around where patients are on waiting lists. And there's a reoccurring theme around the quality of discharge summaries when we discharge inpatients, and particularly in the areas of any kind of changes to medication for patients once they're discharged as well, and being clear with general practice over why we've taken certain actions. So we're running this through both an 8-step process and also highlight reports, because the ICB and other partners are involved as well. So we could just go on to the next slide, please. So this is just a summary in terms of where we've got to so far, and when I get onto the final slide you'll realise why I wanted to kind of give an update this week as well. So in terms of some of those initial issues, we identified the suboptimal communication lines between primary and secondary care. So Jonathan, our comms team and service lines have done a lot of very valuable work around coming up with directories of both trust and GP colleagues and setting up bypass numbers so that we can all speak and contact to each other much better. We're routing any concerns or complaints from GPs through our PALS team. So Ali Stanton and team in PALS are handling that very well. We're recording that on Datex as well. So we've got a really good record in terms of incidents of cases, themes as well, what particular areas are impacted, rather than those complaints coming to us through kind of different routes and to different areas. And we've recently run our first monthly assurance meeting as well. So that's with colleagues in quality governance, with Jonathan and a couple of other partners as well, just to see what's happening in terms of kind of complaints progress and trends as well. So we're currently averaging around about 7 complaints through a week. We are, to be realistic, expecting a few more as kind of word gets out and colleagues in primary care are getting confidence about how quickly we're kind of responding and addressing to concerns as well. So that may go in an upward direction. So if we could just go on to the final slide, please. So the particular reason for catching everyone this week is Jonathan and I have been involved in a GP improvement week, which has been going on in Pathfields and Beacon primary care networks across Monday to Wednesday of this week. We both managed to get to both practices to meet people in person, discuss issues and receive feedback as well. This is an event that's been facilitated by the Devon ICB, but also by improvement colleagues with from NHS England as well. So it's been good just from my perspective, in terms of my improvement practice, to be working with fellow improvement professionals from other parts of the NHS. So that's been very enjoyable. And some of the early themes that have been emerging out of the improvement week is queries over how we handled shared care, that issue again around the quality of discharge letters, and opportunities in the pharmacy space, both in terms of community pharmacy to help primary care, but also around some of the challenges around outpatient prescribing and fulfillment of those prescriptions. Additional things that have come out in the last 24 hours or so is also queries over advice and guidance timelines. And we've also identified an opportunity to improve the pathway of referrals to orthopaedics from patients attending outpatient physio. So it's been a really positive and useful exercise to connect and work with different people and to build some links in primary care as well. So that's the improvement week. So a couple of final things just to update you on. We are picking off quick wins as we go along. So we're grateful for support from surgery around some changes that we've been able to make to the sickness certificate process. So essentially, I'm giving out sick notes for a longer period to reduce GP follow-up. There's a whole load of good work that's been going on over the last year, 24 months in the outpatient transformation programme, which is very much improved our advice and guidance offer from pretty much all specialties within the trust, and is also working its way through phasing out paper letters to GP practices, which is very well received from primary care as well. Our kind of big next step on the horizon is just clarifying with wider colleagues in the system the kind of signed off external professional standards. And then we will need to be thinking about a little bit of a communication process through the trust, both to existing clinical colleagues through forums such as CME and HMSC, but also about how we can get some of the flavour into induction and kind of wider postgraduate medical education as well. So some really exciting developments going on within the kind of primary care space, and we're building some very good links as well. And just from a personal perspective, very much enjoying learning about different parts of the system and making a few kind of new connections as well. So thank you everyone, appreciate the time.
Brilliant, thank you Neil, really interesting update. Lots of good information in there, and it's really nice to hear about something that's completely external to the hospital but has got such an important, feed in and linkage out. So thank you. Has anybody got any questions? Again, I haven't got any in the chat. Lots of nice comments, so thank you for those. I guess from me, Neil, I was just going to ask you, was there any surprises in the feedback that you've been getting in terms of, the impact on the trust? Anything that you kind of thought, oh, didn't think it might be that? I expect there's some familiar themes. I just wondered if there's any surprises.
Yeah, so a couple of things. I think the first thing around advice and guidance and how critical that is to primary care in terms of getting quick responses to help with the management of patients, to keep them out of the hospital, keep them out of the emergency department. So it kind of really brought home the importance of that working really well, and the concern that our colleagues have got in primary care for kind of patients they're seeking advice and guidance on. So that was one element. And I think the other kind of big takeaway was very much around me seeing a big opportunity to build some really good links, particularly on the managerial side. So we've got a really good management team and group within Derriford, but actually there's potentially some links we can get into some of those practice managers, and they would certainly, I think, kind of very much appreciate that as well, just in terms of just resolving issues and dealing with queries, because communication just clears up a whole load of things very quickly.
Great, thank you. Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands up, so I'm going to move on to Gemma. Thank you.
Thank you, Kay. So hi, everyone. My name's Gemma. I'm the service line manager for respiratory medicine. I'm going to talk you through an 8-step that I've been doing around the sleep pathway within respiratory medicine. So the problem we had is that patients are referred to respiratory medicine for sleep apnea and are waiting in excess of 78 weeks to be seen and treated. And some of these patients are professional drivers, so there's an impact there on their ability to continue with their work. So what does this mean for the patients? There are long delays, or there have been long delays in patients being tested and treated for their sleep apnea. Patients were attending for multiple appointments before they were even starting their treatment. We also had clinics that were not being fully utilised and booked out of chronological order, which meant that some of our longest waiting patients were waiting even longer, and patients who were only just referred were being seen, all of whom were routine patients. So we had a look at that, and there's an increase in demand for sleep apnea patients, and that's a national issue. It wasn't just sort of a Derriford issue. So at the bottom there, there's the length of wait, which was when I first started this project, I had a look at the length of wait, and you can see there we have patients waiting from 0 up to 96 weeks to be seen within our clinics. Can I have the next slide, please? So my approach, what did I do? So I started my 8-step as part of my practice coaching, and obviously identified what my problem was. And a part of my 8-step, I present at our weekly chest clinic huddle the data and sort of get support from colleagues of how to sort of keep moving this one forward. I did a review of the current sleep waiting list, which was obviously on the previous slide, to know what my starting position was, to look at obviously my sort of the current position when we started. At the bottom there is my process map that we did. So we did that as part of a team. So I did that alongside our physiologists who lead on our sleep clinics, our lead consultant for our sleep pathway, and some of my clinical admin manager, so my admin team as well, to look at where the patients were being delayed. So where was our waste? How long was it taking these patients to go through the pathway? It's not very clear. So, but we did identify that patients were waiting a long time to have their overnight oximetry appointment, which is the start of their pathway. So every patient has to have overnight oximetry before we then decide whether they then go on to have treatment for their sleep apnea. So that was an area that we knew was probably sort of a quick fix. Triaging was another area, and then just getting the patients in and seen and started on their treatment. So we started to collect some baseline data to look at all the various sort of areas. So I started to look at the patients seen and slots available, the number of DNAs and the number of empty slots that we had, just to make sure we were fully utilising those clinics, and if patients were DNAing, why were they DNAing? And then at the bottom there is the total sleep waiting list, and split with patients who were waiting over 18 weeks and patients who were waiting under 18 weeks. Next slide, please. So with all of this in mind, we started to implement some changes. So the graph there at the top is the patients seen, our slots available, and our new additions to the waiting list, so that we could just get some sort of demand and capacity information as well. One of the first things we did was implemented a see and treat clinic with our lead physiologist. So she would see the patients in clinic and then set them up on sleep apnea or set them up on CPAP treatment, which prevented the patients from coming back, because a lot of our patients come in for overnight oximetry, they take that home, have their do the tests at home, bring the oximeter back. We then see them in clinic, say they need to be set up on CPAP, send them home, and then a couple of weeks later, or however long it takes them to come back, we then bring them back to set them up on CPAP. So we're just trying to decrease the amount of attendances at hospitals. So the see and treat clinic is up and running, and has been really positive and really well received by our patients. So that was the first thing that we did. We've set up, you can see there, I've got additional physiologist clinics, so that's increased our slot availability. And we've just recently managed to get our consultants to start doing additional clinics as well to bring down that wait. So which has been hard work alongside strikes and things, but luckily the team have been really engaged. So we've gone from an average of 10 slots a week across the board to 38 slots per week, which we're hoping is sort of sustainable going forward, and we'll continue to reduce that length of wait. So as it stands, you can see at the bottom there, when I started the project, we had obviously 96 weeks was our longest wait. We're now at 64 weeks, which is a reduction. It's not a massive reduction, but it is coming down in the right direction. So it's going, and waiting lists are difficult to have a dramatic sort of impact, but I have just alongside that, this is obviously to see the patients in clinic by the consultant or physiologist, and like I said, the overnight oximetry patients, they have to have the oximetry before, so the length of wait actually for overnight oximetry has decreased from 19 weeks to 13 weeks, which is a really big impact there, but we know that then moves the bottleneck along. So yeah, that's sort of where we are with the impact. So for me, sort of doing my practice coaching, the key learning from that is I've been able to understand the whole process a lot better and understand where the delays are and be able to support the team to make the changes, and understanding the waste and the opportunities across the board and across the whole pathway, and having a better understanding of the data and how that can influence change has been really beneficial for myself and the team. We know we're not quite there, but it's all going in the right direction. And yeah, I think we've got a bit of a way to go, but with the changes we've implemented, I think it will continue to improve. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Gemma. And actually, if we just move on to the next slide, this is just to say, obviously, you've certified now in practice coach, so really, really well done. And I know it requires such dedication from people to do this, because this is all on top of your day job, and everybody knows just how busy things are, particularly in your areas as well, Gemma. So, huge congratulations. And I think the other thing to say is, although you're saying, the improvements are huge to the patient that was waiting that long, that's massive. And there's always a big lag, isn't there, in terms of the improvement you see in your waiting lists. So just really, really encouraging, and thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions for Gemma? I'm sure she's hoping no, but if anybody's got any questions, I'm happy to take those. No, I think the only thing that I would ask Gemma is, having now gone through your practice coach, and it does take several months, is there anything that you've learned that you would kind of do differently if you looked at other problems now, as a result of that kind of practice coach journey?
I think it's probably getting the engagement of the team really early on. I struggled to get the team to engage as early as I'd hoped, and I think that's why it's taken a little bit longer to see the improvement. Now the team are on board and see the improvement every week as part of our huddle. They can see the benefits. So I think that was quite a tough one, and I think generally improvement is like that anyway.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Great reflections, and I'm glad that the huddle is helping. That's good. Lovely. Right, I don't see any hands, so I'm going to move us on. So this is our last slide. So just, I guess, a couple of reflections from me. I think these presentations really highlight the effectiveness of following our method. And I'd particularly like to reflect on the fact of the dedication of the people involved, because, accepting our team, all of this is on top of people's day jobs. And as I said, we are very challenged at the moment. We're going into winter, we've had industrial action, so just a really big well done for those that have taken the time, and we've seen some of those improvements, so really good. And then I think the final reflection is, it is a journey, isn't it? So each of our presenters have said, there's more to do, they want to do more, and that's really important, because I guess we're pursuing perfection. We're probably never going to get there, but it's really great that people have got that enthusiasm and dedication to working towards that. So thank you very, very much. Actually, I've got a question from Jackie in there. Sorry, Jackie, you've just snuck that one in there, which was for Gemma, just around how did you engage the team? We've got a few moments, so if you don't mind, Gemma.
I was just about to message back. That's fine. So I was going to say, one of the first things I did was I set up a working group with the key sort of members of the team, so I could get them in a room together, just talking about the issues. And it just gave them that, the psychological safety, sort of the safe space for them to just be really open and honest with what they felt worked on the pathway and what didn't work. And I certainly think the process mapping helped with that as well. So yeah, that was the key thing that I did, was just getting those key people in a room to just talk through in a very sort of relaxed way. And I think the data helps as well. If you get the data, it shows what's good, what's not so good, and where the improvements are needed. So they were the two sort of key things I did.
Thanks very much, Gemma. I think it's really, really important, because I think so often in life we have an idea of what needs to happen, but don't share it or don't seek other views. So I think that what you've done is really important. And I guess what I would like to hear is, this is our day job. Our day job is continually improving, and therefore we all need to build time into our week to do that. And I appreciate that we have a way to go to do that, but it does seem that if this were seen as our day job, then getting people together might be easier. I'm sure you found it difficult to find a time where everybody was willing to get together. So well done, you.
That's great. Yeah, really good reflection. Thank you, Jackie. Certainly food for thought to finish on, so thank you very much. Just before I do close, just to remind you that we have got a report out coming up in October, so on the 19th. We are hoping to have Laura Daniel to go through her practice coach certification. We'll get an update from Laura Martin, who's been along before, but to talk about some of the work on Stonehouse, particularly around linen. We're hoping to get Callum to come along and talk about the cancer services work. I see Neil nodding there, so that's good. And we will undoubtedly have something from our theatres and length of stay programmes as well. So it looks like it should be a fairly packed agenda, but we look forward to seeing you all then. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for your time.